This is why the 25th Amendment was written. It was ratified in 1967, authorizing the Vice President and a majority of the Cabinet to remove the President from power when and if that President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. The 25th Amendment was written for the day when the Democratic leader of the United States Senate could credibly say, quote, "The President is ranting like an unhinged madman," as he said yesterday. It was impossible to imagine, back when they wrote the 25th Amendment, it was impossible for them to imagine a day with the President of the United States ranting like an unhinged madman until Donald Trump took the oath of office. The 25th Amendment was written for the day when a former Republican member of Congress who voted for that Republican president 3 times would declare to the world, "He has gone insane." The 25th Amendment was written for yesterday at 8:03 a.m. That's what Donald Trump delivered his Easter greeting to the world that included a promise to commit war crimes on Tuesday night. The 25th Amendment was written for this. Most of you have seen this profane and perverse social media post. I am not going to read it, as is customary for such exhibits introduced on TV news programs, because it is pure warmongering, filthy madness. We can put it back up on the full screen for anyone who hasn't read it to actually finish reading it right now. I will not use it as an opportunity for audiences to get to hear another anchorman using the dirty word. I will not read Donald Trump's poison aloud because it is beneath my dignity, and that's not a phrase I use very often. And we should all be deeply concerned about living in a country where an anchorman's dignity, indeed the dignity of anyone, anywhere in the country, on any television show, is much, much higher than the dignity of the depraved President of the United States. But that is where we are tonight. Dear Trump supporters, this is what you've become. This is what you think Easter is for. And I say Trump supporters to mean people who are still Trump supporters. If you woke up yesterday a Trump supporter and then you saw what Donald Trump said and you hated every word of it, welcome to the Enlightenment. Welcome to facing the reality of who and what he is. One consistent Trump voter who is no longer a Trump supporter, who broke with Donald Trump over his cover-up of the Epstein files, former Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene composed her thoughts about an hour and 40 minutes after Donald Trump's social media post. And I submit this to Trump supporters who have not yet seen Donald Trump in the light that Marjorie Taylor Greene now sees him in. She was very close to him. She was his friend, she thought. And I'm sure there are many important issues of disagreement that I could explore with Marjorie Taylor Greene, but no Republican issued a better, more focused, more thorough response to Donald Trump on Easter morning than Marjorie Taylor Greene. She raised every issue that Republicans claim to care about, especially Republicans who claim to be Christian. Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote, "On Easter morning, this is what President Trump posted. Everyone in his administration that claims to be a Christian needs to fall on their knees and beg forgiveness from God and stop worshiping the president and intervene in Trump's madness. I know all of you and him, and he has gone insane, and all of you are complicit. I'm not defending Iran, but let's be honest about all of this. The strait is closed because the U.S. and Israel started the unprovoked war against Iran based on the same nuclear lies they've been telling for decades, that any moment Iran would develop a nuclear weapon. You know who has nuclear weapons? Israel. They are more than capable of defending themselves without the U.S. having to fight their wars, kill innocent people and children, and pay for it. Trump threatening to bomb power plants and bridges hurts the Iranian people, the very people Trump claimed he was freeing. On Easter of all days, we as Christians should be reminded that the Son of God died and rose from the grave so that we can be forgiven once and for all of our sins. Jesus commanded us to love one another and forgive one another, even our enemies. Our president is not a Christian, and his words and actions should not be supported by Christians. Christians in the administration should be pursuing peace, urging the president to make peace, not escalating war that is hurting people. This is not what we promised the American people when they overwhelmingly voted in 2024. I know, I was there more than most. This is not making America great again. This is evil. This is evil. He has gone insane. Our president is not a Christian. There has never been the slightest evidence that Donald Trump is, in any real sense, a Christian. There's nothing religious about him. He never goes to church. He didn't go to church yesterday on Easter. There's never been the slightest evidence that Donald Trump comprehends any of the teachings of Jesus. He certainly never heard the part about turn the other cheek. Notice that in Donald Trump's demented social media post, for which any president should immediately be removed from office, Donald Trump did not say, "Open the Strait of Hormuz or I will open it." Donald Trump said, "Open the strait or he will destroy every bridge and every power plant in Iran." Donald Trump did not say, "Open the strait or I will," because he cannot open the Strait of Hormuz. Even in Iran's militarily weakened state, the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the world is admitting, and has admitted repeatedly, that he cannot open the Strait of Hormuz. Even after the most elaborate and expensive and difficult and successful and brilliant rescue mission ever undertaken by the military, the rescue of an Air Force colonel deep in Iranian territory where the plane was shot down, even after that amazing display of American military ingenuity and courage, Donald Trump cannot figure out how to use that military to open the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump announced today at the White House that they used 155 aircraft and hundreds of military personnel in that rescue mission to save that one colonel who ejected from the back seat of an F-15 that the Iranians shot down on Friday, when Donald Trump had said the Iranians couldn't possibly do that. Donald Trump said they had no air defenses in Iran. And they humiliated Donald Trump by proving him wrong, by shooting down his planes, shooting down 2 of his planes. The pilot of that plane was rescued within hours of the shootdown. The still unnamed, seriously injured colonel had to hide for 48 hours before the rescue team could find him and save him without losing any other military personnel in that very risky mission. They did lose 2 rescue planes worth $100 million each that they had to leave behind in Iran and destroy as they were leaving. And today, at the White House, that brilliant rescue was described by the Secretary of Defense and by General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as a long-standing American military rule of never leaving anyone behind.
We leave no man behind.
That is, of course, the old school version of the idea back when only men flew American military planes. General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, put it this way.
We leave no one behind.
The general knows, unlike Pete Hegseth, that could have been a woman they were trying to rescue, and it might be a woman the next time. But this 21st century notion that we leave no one behind ignores the 120,000 prisoners of war held by German and Japanese forces in World War II for years who were left behind. And the idea of using 155 aircraft and hundreds of military personnel on an immediate rescue mission for a single person of any rank was inconceivable in World War II or in Vietnam, where we left John McCain behind. John McCain was shot down in the skies over North Vietnam, and at the time, no one tried to rescue him. In fact, he was injured in the crash of his plane in a lake in Hanoi and was helped out of the water by the North Vietnamese people his plane was there to attack. John McCain spent the next 5 years in a prison camp in North Vietnam where he was repeatedly tortured. And in Donald Trump's first full month as a politician and a presidential candidate, he attacked Republican Senator John McCain. And when reminded that John McCain was a war hero, Donald Trump said he's not a war hero.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he
camp.
was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
I like people who weren't captured. That colonel heard him say that. That colonel who spent 48 hours hoping not to be captured in Iran knew that the first thing that Donald Trump ever said in his political life about American pilots shot down in combat was, he's not a war hero. I like people who weren't captured. Trump supporters listened to Donald Trump say that about John McCain 11 years ago, and then they voted for him. And they gave us this. Marjorie Taylor Greene heard Donald Trump say that 11 years ago, and then she voted for him. And now Marjorie Taylor Greene says he has gone insane. As I mentioned to Rachel the first time we had a discussion with former Harvard Medical School psychiatrist Dr. Lance Dotis about Donald Trump's mental health and how close he was to insane was in the first month of his first presidency in 2017.
Lying in the way that he does it, repeated, dangerous lying, makes him unfit and is a sign of serious mental disturbance. And to the extent he doesn't know reality, and I agree, by the way, I don't think he does know reality clearly. He doesn't have a clear grasp of it because he changes it. He makes up reality to suit his internal needs.
That was 11 years ago. 11 years ago. But tonight, Marjorie Taylor Greene believes Donald Trump is insane. She's seen enough. She has finally seen enough. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, who Donald Trump has claimed at various times to be negotiating with, responded to Donald Trump's social media post saying, "Make no mistake, you won't gain anything through war crimes." The White House press corps failed once again in an opportunity to question Donald Trump and the Secretary of Defense and the CIA director and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who were all at the White House press briefing stage at the same time. Almost every reporter who had a chance wasted it. However, the New York Times reporter, Zolan Kano-Youngs, did ask about war crimes.
Are you concerned that your threat to bomb power plants and bridges amount to war crimes?
No, I'm not. I hope I don't have to do it.
And when Dasha Burns at Politico asked Donald Trump if any civilian targets are off limits, like specifically schools, she said schools, Donald Trump said, I don't want to tell you that. And so the President of the United States, who falsely denied that an American Tomahawk missile hit a school in the first day of his war, killing 165 people, now wants the world to believe he just might deliberately destroy schools and kill every child in those schools. He might just do that. And this is why the 25th Amendment was written. The only responsible thing for James David Vance to do yesterday, when he saw Donald Trump's social media post at 8:03 a.m., was to call an emergency meeting of the cabinet at the vice president's residence at 9 a.m. And as soon as a majority of the cabinet arrived, asked for a vote to remove the powers of the presidency from Donald Trump. But J.D. Vance did nothing. No member of the cabinet did anything. No member of the cabinet resigned. And Marjorie Taylor Greene was so right to say to every member of the Trump cabinet who she knows in her statement, all of you are complicit. She is so right. They are the most cowardly cabinet members in history. They were chosen specifically for their cowardice and utter debased fealty to Donald Trump. Donald Trump made sure that every cabinet member he chose was incapable, through cowardice, of ever voting to remove him under the 25th Amendment, no matter what he did or said, even if he has gone insane. They are the most cowardly cabinet in history, in disgraced service to the most cowardly president in history, who today, in another burst of madness, actually said this.
I'm brave. We're all brave.
I'm brave. That would make Donald Trump the first brave Trump in recorded history. He certainly was not brave enough to go to war when he was of military age during the Vietnam War. No Trump has ever gone to war. Donald Trump's ancestors actually left Europe and came to the United States to evade military service. That's the Trump family tradition. And no one in Donald Trump's cabinet is brave. None of them. Donald Trump's director of the CIA, who made a presentation in the briefing room today, actually spent more time praising Donald Trump in his remarks than praising the intelligence service and the hundreds of military personnel who brilliantly carried out that rescue. Donald Trump's defense secretary spent more time praising Donald Trump than praising the people who risked their lives saving their injured brother in arms. The one person who spoke into that microphone in the White House press briefing room today who did not praise Donald Trump, did not offer one word of praise for Donald Trump, was the only man in uniform.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. A note before I start, I know many of you want specific details in these briefings. We will share what we can.
That was it. Thank you, Mr. President, for inviting him to speak, and not another word to or about Donald Trump. General McCain praised every military member of the rescue force while being very careful not to disclose exactly how many there were. And his final words were for the man who he thought of as the true hero of the rescue, the colonel, whose code name was Dude 44 Bravo.
The courage demonstrated by both the pilot and the weapons system officer while isolated and them invading the enemy cannot be overstated. To every member of the Joint Force, our interagency partners, the leadership at CENTCOM, and our leaders at the department and above, thank you. I'm proud of each and every one of you and thankful to our deployed forces and their families. And lastly, and most importantly, to Dude 44, welcome home. Job well done. Thank you.
Only one person in that room understood who really is the most important person in that rescue story. It was Dude 44. And no amount of drooling praise from Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense or from his CIA director, endlessly gushing about Donald Trump today, can make Donald Trump the most important person in that remarkably successful and heroic rescue mission. And so tonight, the most successful mission in Donald Trump's war so far is the rescue of an Air Force colonel whose F-15 was shot down in Iran long after Donald Trump claimed that he had completely obliterated Iran's air defense. Donald Trump and his Secretary of Defense insisted that Iran had no air defenses left days before that F-15, which can fly at 1,800 miles an hour, was shot down by the Iranians. And Donald Trump has no plan to open the Strait of Hormuz, which was closed only because of Donald Trump's war. And so the words of Marjorie Taylor Greene about Donald Trump and his cabinet stand tonight as the most honest Republican statement about them. He has gone insane, and all of you are complicit. After this break, we will be joined by Navy veteran Congressman Chris Deluzio. That's next. Our next guest, Congressman Chris Deluzio, graduated from the United States Naval Academy and served as a surface warfare officer in the United States Navy. He deployed overseas 3 times, including once to Iraq, and helped patrol the Strait of Hormuz. He joined with other former military veterans in November to make this video.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
Donald Trump's Justice Department tried and failed to indict those Democratic veterans for simply stating the law. Joining us now is Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. There's so many issues I want to talk to you about. Let's go to war crimes first, because that's what you were talking about in that video, anticipating possible situations that we're facing now. There's a lot of discussion tonight about if Donald Trump does issue orders that constitute war crimes in terms of his bombing attack and missile attack on Iran, who at the command level, you would expect the chairman of the Joint Chiefs to say no. You would expect protests at the command level. But what about below the command level? What about at the rank you served at and below?
Yeah, look, folks who are in the most junior, right, whether junior officers, junior enlisted, they're not the ones who are ever going to be charged with that kind of determination decision when you've got a president. And let's be clear, the fact that the president is openly contemplating war crimes, I mean, he's talking about destroying civilian infrastructure, not things that even have some military application. The fact that he couldn't even say a school, an attack on schools would be out of bounds is just crazy. And it's not just about some hypothetical international law. When a treaty is ratified by our Senate, it is American law under our Constitution. And that has the force of our Constitution. So, of course, we expect, I would expect, there to be some people saying to the president, for crying out loud, you cannot order the military to violate the law and commit war crimes and kill civilians and try to intimidate a civilian population and, frankly, stain the honor of our military. I don't expect that to fall on privates and lieutenants. I expect that to fall on the people around the president to stand up for the rule of law in this country.
So Donald Trump issued this threat yesterday morning saying, open the strait or I will bomb everything and I'll do all this civilian bombing, infrastructure, bridges, power plants. He didn't say, open the strait or I will. With your experience in the Strait of Hormuz, why isn't Donald Trump saying, I will open the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, as anyone could tell you, and I'm sure people around the president said it to him before he launched this foolish war, an unnecessary war, the Iranians would shut down the strait if you go attack them, if they feel like they're up against the wall, as they are now in this moment. It's something that anyone who's been around this region, and I sailed through the Strait of Hormuz nearly 20 years ago, the ability in that narrow navigable part of the strait to shut it down, to harass shipping, to threaten to mine it, to launch attacks against vessels, it's substantial. And the Iranians have that capacity, even as diminished as they are now. They're still showing that willingness, and you're seeing that shipping companies and their insurers aren't willing to risk it. That tells you they assess this threat as real, because it is real. And remember, this war started, the Strait of Hormuz wasn't closed. It's this president's foolish and reckless war that led to the Iranians doing the most predictable thing possible, which is to shut down the strait, because it's the little leverage they have. And we're all paying for it. We're paying for it at the gas pumps, of course. I filled up today in Western Pennsylvania, north of $4 a gallon. And we're paying for it with everything else that's affected by the diesel shipping costs. And so this war is really hitting folks at home in our pocketbooks. And this president is solely to blame for that happening.
So Donald Trump's objective in the war he started as of tonight, is to open the strait. That's his objective, the strait that was closed because of his war. That couldn't have been his objective on the first day of the war, because the strait was open.
And Lawrence, you get to the exact point. These guys are making it up as they go along. The fact that the president is painting some big strategic win to get back to where the region was before he started the war is outrageous. And I've been in a bunch of briefings. There's been reporting, even from members of Congress on the Republican side, talking about those briefings. This administration doesn't know what the heck they're doing. They are squandering the patriotism and the tactical prowess of our fighting men and women who will do what they're ordered to do. They're the best fighting force in the world. You don't waste that. And you don't do it without a strategic vision. And once again, this president to point to a goal now of reopen the strait that he caused to be closed is just, it tells me a lot about the strategic idiocy of this administration.
So it took 155 aircraft, hundreds of military personnel, and possibly an additional 100 or more CIA, and who knows how many here in the United States, to rescue this one colonel in a brilliant mission of rescue. What would it take to open the strait? Apparently it would take a lot more than that to open the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, and think about what you'd be asking Americans to do. You'd be asking American sailors, principally, to go risk their lives, to go put themselves in harm's way around a mining risk, missile attack risk, and more, to usher out oil exports from Middle Eastern despots to go to places like China. That oil doesn't really come to our country. It goes to China and other places in Asia, maybe a little bit in Europe. You'd be asking Americans to risk their lives to enrich Middle Eastern despots so that China can buy their oil. That's what he'd be asking folks to do. I don't think the American people support that. It's why this war is unpopular and increasingly unpopular. And it's not just the billions of dollars that they're going to ask us to spend at the expense of healthcare and more at home. It's the American lives. We've already seen too many Americans come home in flag draped caskets, if you ask me.
Carson Cristoluzio, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. And so the words of Marjorie Taylor Greene about Donald Trump and his cabinet stand tonight as the most honest Republican statement about them. He has gone insane, and all of you are complicit. We'll be right back. When asked about his own mental health at the White House today, here's what Donald Trump said.
What is your response to critics who say that...
I don't care about critics.
What is your response to critics who say that it is your mental health that should perhaps be examined as this war continues?
I haven't heard that. But if that's the case, you're going to have more people like me, because our country was being ripped off on trade, on everything, for many years until I came along.
Of course, he has heard that. He's heard that about his mental health for 11 years on this program. MS Now medical analyst Dr. Vin Gupta, who says he has not examined, obviously, Donald Trump and is not attempting to officially diagnose him, described what we all are witnessing this way, quote, erratic, can't finish sentences, often confused, illogical train of thought, word-finding difficulties, developing and worsening gradually over time. The president is exhibiting all the signs of dementia. Congresswoman Shelley Pingree of Maine posted this. The president spent Easter on social media threatening to bomb another country's power plants and bridges, openly talking about committing war crimes like he's live posting a sporting event. This man has the nuclear codes. The cabinet and Congress must confront the obvious. Time for the 25th Amendment. And then, of course, there's Marjorie Taylor Greene's assessment of her old friend, Donald Trump. Quote, he has gone insane. Joining us now is Congresswoman Shelley Pingree of Maine. She's a member of the House Appropriations Committee and the Agriculture Committee. Congresswoman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So first of all, when did you discover what Donald Trump said yesterday morning? Where were you? What was your reaction reading that?
I think I was waking up, getting ready for my family to come visit for an Easter dinner, reading the, social media like everyone else, and just in a deep state of shock, but also, what's the surprise? This is what this man does every day. He disgusts us, he frightens us, and he shows that he's not competent to be the president, which is what so many people are saying every day, including our former colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
How many of your constituents even actually know about the 25th Amendment?
Well, they all seem to know about it now because people seem to be talking about it and tweeting about it. I mean, I hear more often about impeachment, but I think this is a moment, as you were quoting MTG, you're all complicit if you don't do something about this. So it's a way of saying, as you've talked about, the cabinet is complicit if they don't do something about this. They're around him every day. They probably know much more about his confused mental state than any of us in Congress do. You have my colleague on, Chris, who was talking about, members of the military need to speak up. Certainly Congress has to speak up and fight back. And the cabinet has to fight back. Congress has attempted a couple of versions of impeachment, were immediately, tabled by the Republicans, and it makes them complicit too if they don't speak up. For a while, people, I think, were saying, hey, this is how the president is. It's locker room talk. You'd hear Republicans say, I like his policies. I don't always like the way he behaves. But now I hear more and more people saying to me, how much of the world is he changing in a way we can never get back? They're worried about climate change. They're worried about his economic policies, destroying the social safety net, our healthcare system, our system of feeding people. And now they're worried that he's gone, and started another war when he promised he wouldn't, that he was going to be the president who ended these endless wars. And he's got the nuclear codes. And he gives these unhinged arguments every single day that change the strategy. Even if you're not a military expert, you hear one day, oh, everything's going to be fine. You hear another day, he's going to bomb them all to smithereens. And it's deeply troubling. Americans, whether you pay a lot of attention to politics or not, whether you're Republican or Democrat, they have a deep sense of what's decent, what's normal, what should be allowable in our culture, and how a president should act. And even though we've been normalizing some of these things by the behavior continuing, I just find more and more people they're frightened, they're angry, and they want to know when it's going to end.
Maine Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, thank you very much for joining our coverage tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, experts on military law say that Donald Trump's threats against Iran, if carried out, would constitute war crimes. That's next with retired Navy Judge Advocate General Todd Huntley. Last week, Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton, who is a Marine combat veteran, said this.
I know active duty Marines who now refer to Pete Hegseth's department as the Department of War Crimes. That's because under Pete Hegseth's leadership, they do things like this: destroy civilian infrastructure, which, just to be clear, is a war crime.
And today, Donald Trump promised more war crimes tomorrow night.
We have a plan, because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to.
Joining us now is Todd Huntley, director of the National Security Law Program at Georgetown University Law Center. He is a retired Navy judge advocate general who previously served as the director of the Navy's National Security Law Division. And I just want to ask you about the plan that Donald Trump just described. Now, that's a pathological liar speaking, so it's entirely possible that that plan doesn't exist. But if the Defense Department does have that plan to actually blow up every bridge in a country, every bridge in Iran, and the power plants, would that plan be legal?
No, Lawrence, it wouldn't be. Targeting decisions and targeting operations have to be conducted on a case-by-case basis. So there are cases or circumstances where power plants and bridges could be lawful military targets if they are contributing to the military of the enemy. And if attacking them would give the United States a definite military advantage. But that has to be done on a case-by-case basis. You can't just carte blanche say that all power plants are now going to be targeted. That, in fact, would be a war crime. It would be an intentional targeting of civilian objects and objects that are indispensable to the survival of the civilian population.
So the phrase dual use seems to be what's going to control this interpretation here. Politico is reporting tonight that war planners are revising the list, according to two defense officials, as American and Israeli warplanes search for new targets. The dual-use nature of the targets would make them legitimate, the officials said. So dual use would be there's a significant, or what amount of military use of a bridge shared with civilian use of a bridge would make that bridge a target?
Again, that's a case-by-case determination. It does not have to be a long-term use. It does not have to be 100% use. But I'll give you an example. Say, for instance, there was a bridge that Iranian military forces were going to use to bring their forces in to attack those U.S. forces that were rescuing the downed airmen. That bridge would be a lawful target. It may have been serving a military purpose for 30 minutes or so, and but at that moment, it would give the United States a military advantage and could be targeted.
So what will you be looking for in what would you be suggesting if you were in the Defense Department now? What would you be using as a defining rule here?
So you would have to look at how the military is using each of those, power plants or bridges or whatever the other civilian infrastructure that's going to be targeted it happens to be. How is the military using it? But that is only the first step. Even if the military is using it and it's going to give a military advantage by destroying it, you also have to look at the proportionality. That is, how many civilians are going to be killed or injured, or what is going to be the destruction of civilian objects, and does the military advantage weigh the expected harm to civilians? So it's not just saying, yes, the military is using this power plant to power communication systems that the military is using. You have to go to that next step and see how it's going to affect civilians.
Todd Huntley, thank you very much for joining us again tonight.
Thank you.
Former Navy Judge Advocate General Todd Huntley gets tonight's last word.